Hello, and welcome to Women in Business, where we interview entrepreneurs and senior managers and show you the strengths, successes, obstacles, and roadblocks women experience in business. Since I believe every person in business needs to be visible, I'd like to invite you to watch www.sob6, that's the number 6, tips.com, which will give you some valuable information should you get the call to be on radio or TV, which I think is extremely important. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at Gayle Carson, that's Gayle, GayleCarson13 at gmail.com, or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter.
I have a very interesting guest for you today. Her name is Lena Phoenix. She's the co-founder and CFO of Feel the World Incorporated, which is the makers of Xero shoes. The company makes lightweight, durable footwear inspired by natural movement. After turning down an offer on Shark Tank in 2013, Lena raised over $2.3 million in debt capital from multiple services. She also spearheaded one of the first consumer products Regulation A+ equity campaigns, raising over $1 million from customers, fans, and followers. This is the company's third year on the Boulder Mercury 100 list and their first year on the top 100 women-owned businesses in Colorado. Xero Shoes was also recently named a Colorado company to watch. Welcome, Lena.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I have a ton of questions for you. So let's start off with, because I actually met your husband. And your husband told me that you would be a much better guest than he would. So I want to know, the pros and cons of co-founding a business with your husband.
Well, that is an excellent question. One of the big pros is that I have the opportunity to work with my best friend. My husband and I have been together for 18 years, married for 15. And when we got together, our financial situation was very different than it is now. So we didn't get married with the plan of starting a business together. But it turns out that we just happen to have extremely complementary skill sets that are very well suited for what we're trying to do. And because we really respect each other, we work very well together in a lot of different ways. And so that's one of the pros, is just being able to work with someone that you really care about. Another thing is that when you are an entrepreneur, it is extremely grueling. And, we regularly work 60 to 80-hour weeks. And because we're married to each other and working towards the same goal, it is, we both understand what's going on. Sometimes our rhythms are a little out of sync. He's working all weekend on a time I have a weekend off, or, I've hit the wall when, he's ready to go out and do something different. But there's a lot of compassion there because we both very well understand what the other's going through. So those are some of the pros. But we have also had to learn how to navigate this new relationship. Any successful partnership really requires a fairly high level of psychological skill and understanding, and the ability to not take things personally, which is often, I think it might be a little more challenging with somebody you're married to than somebody that you're not. But in our case, it's been a good education for us and has helped really strengthen our marriage as well as our vision for the company itself.
So really, they say, you shouldn't be doing pillow talk. There should be time when you've got personal and don't talk about business and so forth. However, what happens if you don't agree on certain procedures or pathways?
Yeah, excellent question. And as far as pillow talk goes, we have, I think earlier on in the business, it took us a little while to navigate, okay, like when do we just stop talking? And it's sort of, because you're an entrepreneur, you don't always get control over your schedule. So we may have decided we're both going to take Saturday off, and then there's some emergency that has to be dealt with. So it is important, I think, to carve out downtime to the extent that you can. When we don't agree on something, that's actually an excellent question. And I think there was more power struggle in the early days of working together. But as we got to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses better, we became more skilled at advocating for our position in the case of a disagreement. In my case, I used to defer to him more regularly than I do now, because there were certain, he knew more about the business going in, but as we've grown, there are aspects of the business that I know more about than he does now. And so it's really just a question of saying, okay, who really has more experience in this realm, and who's, best qualified. And, when we need to, we also bring in outside help, whether it's somebody else on the team to get a different opinion, or, even one of our unofficial consultants that we work with on a regular basis.
Well, the next question I have for you is, I'm certain that our listeners are thinking, how could she do this? How could she turn down Shark Tank? But what was it like being on Shark Tank? I mean, there's a whole procedure that we don't see. We only see certain pieces edited together. So what was it like being on Shark Tank? Was it intimidating? Why did you turn them down? What was it like getting on there, et cetera?
Yeah, people call it reality television, but I call it surreality television, because the whole experience was just incredibly surreal. We had kind of a secret weapon in getting on the show. The year that we applied to casting, they do casting calls generally in the spring, I think around April. And other times of the year, if you apply, you're probably not going to hear back because they don't have open casting. But once we learned that, we applied at the right time of the year. And because my husband has a background as a professional performer, he was a stand-up comic, also an actor, street performer, and had a degree in film. He was very comfortable in the TV realm. I was much more nervous about it, but him being so relaxed really helped make the experience less anxious for me. The biggest thing that happened there were two things. The biggest things that happened that were really unexpected is, one, once we realized that we were going to be on the show, it really forced us to come together as a team and hammer out, okay, what do we really think this business can be? It was an extremely unifying experience to work with the producers, because they do some coaching with you in the beginning to prep you for your segment. And we studied every episode that we could find. We read books from all the sharks. And we really spent a lot of time thinking about what we wanted our business to be, because we knew that the key to being successful on the show was to know our numbers inside and out, backwards and forwards, and upside down, so that any question they threw at us, we would be able to answer. In terms of actually being on the show, it was very interesting, because to some extent it seems like a regular conversation, but you're positioned much farther back from the sharks than it looks like on TV. I didn't even notice the cameras. I was just very focused on the conversations that we were having. But I say it was surreal. Stephen and I, to this day, still debate. He thinks we were in there for about 40 minutes. I think we were in there for about 20. The fact that we can't agree on that shows you that time was a little distorted and altered. But when Kevin made us the offer for essentially a controlling interest in our company for, I think, less than 1x of what we were projecting in revenue for the year that we filmed, there really wasn't any question for us. We felt like that was just not the right thing to do for our company. We had read Kevin's book, but obviously we didn't know if he would be a good person for us to work with or really get or understand our product. And so we had gone in hoping that we would catch the attention of several sharks and be one of the famous deals. But since, although Robert liked the product, he said he didn't like our valuation, and Barbara didn't like Steven. I don't know why, but she just didn't like him.
Yeah,
so.
I love Steven. He's a great guy. He's got a great personality.
Well, it was very funny for me because, she says, I think on the show, I hated you from the minute you walked out here. And I was like, wow, okay, didn't see that one coming, to him, not to me. And so I was prepared to talk about my margins and my EBITDA and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't really prepared to talk about my marriage. So she was out, and so it was relatively easy for us simply because, we went in there with a valuation that we knew the sharks were going to want to cut down, but they cut it down so much farther than we were willing to accept. There really wasn't any question for us. And it was definitely the right decision. Being on Shark Tank was an incredible experience. We got great value out of being in front of 8 million people. It really helped prove the concept of our product because up until that point, we were primarily known in the running community. But once we were on Shark Tank, we were in front of 8 million people who didn't know anything about this whole natural movement idea, the concept that less is more in footwear, and that your feet work best when they're not, boxed up in complex shoes, but that you allow them to function the way they were designed. And so when we had people calling saying, where have you been all my life? I hate shoes. This sounds perfect. That was like, okay, we really got something here.
Well, now you also say, which is very unusual, you love your attorneys, and most people want to curse attorneys. So what is that all about?
Yeah, somebody was asking me the other day, I was on a panel and they were asking us to talk about our mentors. And I've had many mentors through the course of my career. I've been very fortunate to have people take time to mentor me in the process of how to be in business. But as we started this company, I was taken under the wing of an attorney who was the first person who I really came to feel like this person totally has my back. We had signed an agreement that was not favorable to us. It was one of the things we'd done early on in our business when we didn't think we could afford attorneys. And so I read it through and I didn't really understand the implications of some of the things that I was signing. And when I started with this attorney and she read through it, she was just so angry on my behalf. And I really came to understand having a good attorney on your team is just invaluable because they know so much that there's just no way you can know. And throughout the course of our business, we've run into some really odd and complex situations that have often been very, very difficult emotionally to deal with because, running a business, people think about all the things that, the production and how do you get your product out there and, all different kinds of things. But we run into the darker side of the business as well. People coming after us for things that we never imagined might be an issue. And having a good attorney, I feel like is like having a good psychotherapist because, they understand what you're going through. They have been down the road a million times before. And they know, I had a situation recently with someone and the attorney was like, here are your options. And here's what I recommend, because at the end of the day, you only have so many hours, and this is what's going to best preserve your sanity. And I thought, okay, now that's really good advice. And so I just have really come to value the advice and support that I've gotten from our attorneys, and we've been fortunate to just have some really good ones.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, another question that I'm sure that our audience is really interested in is, how on earth did you raise $1 million in equity from your customers? Because that's really unusual.
Yeah, good question. So the secret, there's a couple secrets actually, but the first secret is that we had already been in business 6 or 7 years before we decided that we were going to try equity crowdfunding as a method of raising capital. And when you're looking to raise money, crowdfunding is not something I would recommend if you are a startup, because crowdfunding takes a crowd. And we had a crowd, so we were a good candidate for it. We didn't really we weren't interested in doing it when we first learned about it, when the Jobs Act first made it possible for businesses to take investments directly from their customers. We thought, well, that sounds like a lot of work and not really sure why we would want to do that. But we spoke with someone, also another attorney, who said, no, you don't really understand. When you give people the opportunity to invest in your company, not only are they providing you with capital, which is always nice to have, they're also demonstrating how committed they are to you, and they are literally invested in your success. And so once we realized that it was an opportunity for us to give the people who are our most diehard fans an even deeper way to engage with our business, we thought, okay, yeah, this is something that we want to do. And we were very naive going into it. We had no idea how much work it was going to be. We were the first company to do, that I'm aware of, to do a Regulation A+ raise without a broker, and to be qualified in all 50 states to do that. So it took much, much longer to deal with the administrative side of doing it on our own than we anticipated. We're classical entrepreneurs. Whenever confronted with some new challenge, we always say, well, how hard can this be? And you regularly learn pretty hard. But learn through experience. And so we, by the time we got our raise up and running, and again, our success was in large part dependent on my husband's ability to write excellent copy explaining why we were choosing to do this kind of a raise, and also to create a very entertaining video that introduced people to us if they didn't already know us and our business and how we were growing and that kind of thing. So we were able to put together a good package because we know how to do all of those things. And we had a very receptive customer base already in place. We expected that we would spend a fair amount of time marketing to people outside of our customer and fan base, but we didn't have time. We were just so busy running the business and dealing with the people who are coming in from our customer base that I think we spent a very small amount of money on marketing beyond that. And it was one of the best things we've done.
So here you've done all these wonderful things and you've met all these different challenges. But I understand that you have a chronic immune disorder. So how has that played into running a company and certainly being, an integral part of that?
Yeah, that has been one of my biggest personal challenges. When I was 18, I came down with mono, and I never really got better. I just found myself, while I could function, I just found that I had less energy than most people. And it took me a very long time to recover from overexerting myself. And so I live out here in Colorado, where people are always saying things like, hey, let's go climb a 14,000-foot mountain. And those are things that I can't do. And over time, I had managed to understand where my limits were and didn't push very far beyond them, because the consequences of doing so, if other people overdo it, they rest for a little bit and they get better. In my case, ultimately, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and immune dysfunction syndrome, which is a very poorly understood disease, unfortunately. Afflicts between 1 and 4 million people in the United States, but it's criminally underfunded and just very poorly understood. So I just kept myself in a very limited range of motion there for a good couple of decades. And when we started this company, I continued to do the same. But as the company grew, and it really started with Shark Tank, because television doesn't care what your health concerns are. You need to be where you need to be when you need to be there. And it was the first time I really started pushing myself beyond the boundaries that I thought that I had. And over the course of the 9 years of doing this business, I've begun to learn that I can actually do quite a bit more than I thought. I've learned that the hard way. Sometimes I've pushed way too hard, and it's taken me quite a bit of time to recover. But I've found some good doctors to support me. I've just worked very hard to recognize that this is what I do. This is the choice that I've made, is to run this company with my husband right now. I wouldn't be able to do this if I had children. Early on, when Stephen and I were debating whether or not to have kids, I knew that if I had a kid, that would be the only thing I would do. I was more interested in having a career, so that was not a particularly difficult choice for me. But even in my case, when people talk about work-life balance, I really don't have any. I work, and then I go home and I sleep and maybe watch a little bit of TV. That's just the way my life is right now, and I'm at peace with it, because I feel like we're doing good things. We really believe in our product and that it's making a difference in the world, and so I would like to work less and have more time for cooking and exercising and going to movies and spending more time with friends. And hopefully we'll get to a point where that's the case. But I have just accepted that this is the reality right now. And that acceptance, I think, is a big part of it, of managing a chronic illness, is just recognizing your limits, what you can do, and making the appropriate choices.
And that is the truth, absolutely. So if people wanted to find out where your product is, Lena, where can they find Xero Shoes?
So our website is xeroshoes.com, and that's spelled with an X, Xero shoes.com. On our website, you can also find a store locator. And if you navigate to that and put in your zip code, it will tell you if there are any retailers near where you are. Because we started online in the middle of the recession, and then brick and mortar retail went through some rather seismic changes over the last few years, we are still primarily an online business. We do sell through Amazon as well as our own channel. But there are some stores around the country and around the world that are carrying our product. So if there's one near you, you can find it on that page. If there's a store near you that you think should be carrying our shoes, please go ask them to carry us, as that's one of the ways that people learn about us, and that there is a lot of demand for this type of natural, healthy footwear.
That's fantastic. Well, we have about 2 minutes left, Lena. So I want to ask you, if you could tell us what you think are the 3 most important things someone starting a business needs to understand.
Absolutely. So ultimately, I think it comes down to, you really have to, if you are the visionary person in a starting a business takes two things. It takes vision and it takes details. And very rarely do those two things combine in the same person. So if you're the visionary, you got to find a detail person. If you're the detail person, you got to find a visionary. And so those are really, really critical, because oftentimes people are like, oh, I'm so good at this one thing and I want to go out and start my business, but they're not prepared for the licenses and the taxes and the details and the regulations and all the things that are a part of it. So that really has to be taken care of. So that's one thing. Another thing is that you just have to develop a thicker skin. In business, nothing's personal, is one of the things that I've had to come to learn. If somebody calls us, generally if a person doesn't get a pair of shoes when they were expecting, it's not generally a life or death situation, but sometimes people call as if it's a life or death situation. And you just have to understand everybody's got a rough life and has bad days, and if they're taking it out on you, it's not personal, and that's just really, really important to your success. And the third thing is because business is ultimately about dealing with other people, the more you can know about psychology and the way people function and how they react, and just general psychological principles, I think the more successful you'll be.
Well, all good pieces of advice, Lena. Well, I certainly hope most of you listening have had a great education today, learning about fundraising, learning about what it's like on Shark Tank, learning what it's like to be in business with your significant other. So again, my guest has been Lena Phoenix, who's CFO of Feedle the World, which is Xero Shoes, Xero Shoes, SHOES.com. Go there if you want to find out more about it. Thanks so much for being with us, Lena. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Women in Business. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And if you have any suggestions as to who you'd like me to have as a guest, just email me at gaylecarson13@gmail.com. Be sure to check out www.sob6tips.com. And in the meantime, go to www.spunkyoldbroad.com to see the resources I have for you.